are larger than you and therefore have a greater range, meaning that you're often giving them more of an advantage by keeping your distance. Dark Souls wants you to be cautious during exploration, but brave and decisive during combat. I'd like to think that Quelleg intentionally closing the distance with you in order to swing her sword over your head was a deliberate and subtle way of communicating this to the player. I'd like to think that, but it's more likely that I'm reading too much into it. Either way, it wouldn't surprise me if many players don't learn this lesson until late in the game, or perhaps never learn it at all. It was an important moment for me during Quelleg, and was a point when my view on the game changed.
Who is this? How'd you find me?
Give me a little credit, Sam.
There's a similar deception found in the lock-on
voice
mechanic. This came
time.
as a huge surprise to me. It's not
Grim,
something that's
what do you
optimal all
want?
the time. I'd go as
To
far as
save
to
your
say
life,
that its usage
we can
should
go
be
from there.
split about
A
50-50
team of armed
throughout
men
the
just
game, and
entered the
this is something
marketplace
that
looking
didn't
for
click
you.
for me until I
They're
played Dark
closing in
Souls
on
2.
your position. Unless
Your
you do
movement is
exactly
much
what I
freer
say,
without the
this will
lock,
be a
and you
very
can
short
position yourself
conversation.
for counterattacks
I'm not
after
doing a
roll much
damn thing
easier.
until you tell me how you
It
found
also
me.
solves some of the camera issues people have.
We're
Once
Third
again,
Echelon.
I'm not
We
sure
got
if
an
this
eye
was
on everyone.
intentional. If so, this is one case that'll say the game failed hard in teaching
Look
the
up.
player that
You'll
the
see it.
lock-on is an optional tool meant to be toggled just as much as raising your shield.
I see it.
For examples, while
Then I
fighting
can
the
take
stray
it back
demon
up
or
to
the
safe
iron
altitude,
golem,
and you can get
staying
moving.
locked on is possibly one of the worst
You
things
still
you
haven't
can do
told me
will
how
work
you
against
found
you.
me.
Of
Move.
course, if
You've
you're
got
playing a
multiple
heavy tank
hostiles
character
inbound
with
on
a
your
great
position,
shield, then it's
and from where you're
unquestionably
at,
better
you're
to
a
stay
sitting
facing
duck.
the enemy.
Now get to that
With
group of
Quelleg
stalls in
dead,
the
you're in
market.
the second
There's a
Bell
lot
of
of cover for
Awakening.
you there.
By my estimation, this is roughly the end of the
It's like
first
the old
third of
days,
the
huh,
game.
Grim?
Just like the old days, Sam. Are you carrying?
Yeah, but I'd rather not risk a firefight when there's civilians around.
That's very noble of you. But right now, what matters to me is getting you out of there in one piece. So get to that group of booths right now, or I can't help you, Sam.
Everybody leave! Get the fuck out of here!
Ringing both bells triggers a cinematic. If you had given
Good.
me time to just try to
Now
figure
let's
out
get you a little
what
closer to
we
those
would have
targets in
explored
the light
the
over
area
there.
around the
Yeah,
blacksmith
Mr.
Go cover
I'm
spot
there.
parish and wondered
Hang
about
on.
the massive
I'm
closed
tapping
off
into the
gate
city's
across
power
from the
grid.
bonfire.
That'll let me
don't
overload
like being out
transformers
here
near
with
you
those
and blow out
freaking
those
bastards.
lights.
Open, and it's a
What if the
clear
guy's
message
armed,
of where
huh?
you're meant to go next.
You think of that?
Hey there, kiddo. What's wrong?
Firelink Shrine also changes. A large serpent has appeared who will give you some advice, but speaking to him is optional. However, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, since we're still in Quelleg's
There's nothing to
domain.
be afraid of in the dark.
There's a bit of a journey before we
Sometimes
get to Sun's
darkness is a
Fortress.
good thing.
Climbing out of Blighttown isn't as challenging as
want to go to
climbing down,
sleep.
but the way out is not without its difficulties.
I could
The
tell you
elevator
something
looks like
before I
something
die.
that's ready to fall apart at any second. At the top, you have
When
an
it's light,
occasionally treacherous
you can't
exit
see
onto
into
a
a
raised
place when it's
platform that
dark.
makes me wonder
But
how
when
a
it's
series
dark,
of ladders would make
you
me
can
better
see
in
what's
every
around
way.
you much better.
There's a lone little fire dog and
Really?
a hamster wheel
So
hilariously
if there's
powering the
monsters
whole
or
thing.
bad people
I appreciate
around, you
From's
can see
attempt at
them.
making the world make
But
sense,
if
but
you're
this
in the
part is
dark,
pretty laughable.
they can't see
There's a
you.
section
I
on the
can't
climb
see
up that
him
is one of the
either.
most
Can you
difficult in
please
the
turn the
game to
light
do
back
without
on?
taking damage and or
Okay.
dying. There are a lot of
Then how
toxic
about
spitters
this?
and a whole pack of
There's
fire
one really
dogs.
cool thing
They're
I
guarding
gotta
a
show you
firekeeper
yet.
soul, which is
There
one
is?
of the more
Show
valuable
me.
treasures in the game.
Okay, here it is. When you're in the dark and your eyes
Continuing
get
up, you
used
make
to
it to the
you
Valley
can
of
see
Drakes.
all sorts
New
of
players
things
may not
around
know
you
they're so
really
close to
well.
Firelink Shrine and may
then
go
you can
exploring
do stuff
instead,
with them.
and end up dead from the sleeping dragon
Take a
that
look at your
triggers when you
mobile.
pick up the
You
Dragon
can
Crest
see it
shield.
really well, right? If there were monsters standing underneath it, because I can see it,
Back down to Blighttown.
maybe I could make it fall on them and they'd go away.
And it would fall on their heads and they wouldn't do that anymore?
That's my girl.
Teddy, what was that?
Daddy needs you to stay in bed now. Okay? He's gonna shut the door and I'll be back real soon, alright?
Okay, Daddy, I love you.
Stay in bed.
There you go, Sam. Nice and dark, just the way you like it.
This is the first of a few times that I will ask this question, and it is not entirely
What do you got,
rhetorical
man?
if
You got
anyone
anything
watching has
good?
the answer.
This place
What
is
exactly
shit.
is the
You
intended
picked it,
method of
asshole.
killing
You
this
said we'd
dragon?
get a couple
Because I
of
can never
thouies.
do it without
Heard
resorting
there was
to
metals
cheesing
and
with
shit.
arrows
We
or
could fence
spells.
in here.
I hope that this
The lady
couldn't
who lives
possibly
here
be
is
the way
hot.
the
Maybe we could wait
developers
for her to
envisioned.
come home.
The way
Take
back
it
to
out in the
Firelink Shrine
trade.
requires
Now you're
crossing over these
talking.
planks of unsupported wood. This will be the last time I point this sort of thing out because I don't want to waste much of the video with all of the examples littered throughout the game. But this is the nail in the coffin for those who think you should be reading the environment for hazards. Black marks on the bridge mean fire. The floor in Asylum gives way only when you step on it.
Dad,
These delicate planks of
what
wood
did
that
you
don't
do
fall
to
apart,
them, Dad?
here I am rolling
Sarah,
on them.
baby,
Here I
don't
am
worry.
rolling on them in a full set of armor that weighs more than a small house.
What are
Sam.
you doing, Daddy?
What are you doing? Sam, talk to me.
Returning to Firelink
Sam?
reveals that the Firekeeper has been
Sam,
murdered,
are you
which
there?
means the bonfire is gone
Come
out.
on, don't check
Which
out on
doesn't
me.
really make sense since there's about
There
a
you
dozen
are.
other
They
bonfires in
brought
the
in some
game that are burning
reinforcements,
just
and the
fine
man
without
calling
a
the shots
nearby
is with them.
Firekeeper.
Get a
You
hold
can
of him.
upgrade your
I'll
Estus
ID him,
flask
and
with
you
your
can
shiny
figure
new
out what
soul,
questions
and you
to
continue
ask.
to the elevators and to Undead Parish.
I've got an
The large
ID on
Emperor
the
was
leader,
located
Sam.
in the depths.
His name is Dimitri
There are also quite a
Gramkos,
few
the
large
local
Titanite
street
shards in
level
the areas
boss.
you just
He
cleared, which
hires
makes
himself and
upgrading
his
to the
gang
next
out
tier
on a
of
regular
weapons feel
basis.
natural here. Once again, I have to commend the level design. Sense Fortress is not an easy section of the game, and it is right next to the smith, so you are encouraged to upgrade your gear as well as your character. You also have another opportunity to tackle the headless statue and go through Darkroot Garden. The garden has a few ambushes, but no instances of cheap gotcha moments.
No
I
more
think the
playing
Moonlight
around.
Butterfly is a terrible boss from
Who
melee
sent
builds,
you?
but that is a topic that I'll get into later.
Okay, enough. You want to know? Send me. It's Coben. Andre Coben.
Now is also a good time to find and kill Havel, who is
Runs
probably
trucks,
the most difficult
guns,
mini-boss in the game for
anything
first-timers who
people
aren't
want
confident enough to circle strafe.
Not good
I used to
enough.
try killing this
Why
guy
does
as soon as I
Coben
could
want
on
me
fresh runs
dead?
and end up extremely frustrated. He's buggy, as you can see from the footage playing right now. Sometimes he recovers instantly from being knocked down and can launch into a
drove
rapid
the car
attack
that
with
hit
no
your daughter.
warning.
Used to
Sometimes his
brag
weapon
about
doesn't
it,
hit
you know,
you,
huh?
but still kills you.
Heard you were coming, so he hired me to kill you before you killed him.
You should refund his money. Where do I find him?
I recently killed him as a spellcaster for the first time and was sorely disappointed by how that fight went.
In the city, the old museum on
Sense
King George
Fortress is
Street.
probably my
It's
second
his
favorite
place
area
now.
in the game after
Guards out front
Undeadburg.
and on the
It's also
sides.
where I died more than anywhere
Don't
else my
tell him I
first
told you.
playthrough. It
I'm
introduces
not
the
gonna
Snake
tell
Man
him
2 at a
a
time
damn
which
thing.
already put a negative point against it, but their attack patterns are not so different than what you've seen so far in the game, and you're able to use their own arrow trap against them.
Don't tell him I told you.
Inside, you have to get across a narrow
But-
bridge while darting through swinging blades. Then you have to fight a snake man while being smart enough to keep out of line of sight of the lightning snake on the upper bridge. There are a few cheap tricks you can use to kill this guy, running back and luring him into a swinging blade for one, but that takes a while and you're better off perfecting your skills of blocking while regaining stamina and striking back whenever there's an opening. There are more traps deeper into the fortress, but all of them have triggers that you could see beforehand. The place is fair, and even though my past self may be cursing me for saying so, my death spiral that happened here on my first time was because I was bad, and not because the game was unreasonable.
Oh, shit!
The only problem with this place are its obligatory gotcha moments, the Mimic chest and the elevator with spikes in the ceiling. The Mimic might be the only gotcha mechanic in the game that I actually like. They're a common monster in games, and the ones in Dark Souls are particularly terrifying. I do know that the messages on the floor around him may serve as a warning, but I don't think it's fair to have the player rely on those, especially when many are intentionally misleading, or you might be playing offline. The same goes for the intended method to tell them apart, the way the chain is stretched forward instead of curved on the floor. This is a way for experienced players to check each chest, but for a new player this might as well not exist at all. The elevator is pretty cheap, and once again, people like to defend it like they did the Hellkite Dragon attack by saying there's blood on the elevator, as if there isn't blood all over the place throughout the rest of the game. Touching bloodstains is even a core component of the online system. I know the blood looks a little different, but we're talking about making a great cognitive leap about a patch of red on the floor that you see only briefly before getting on the lift. My first time through, I didn't find the hidden bonfire before the Iron Golem, nor the shortcut in the cage elevator. I like to think that there's at least one person watching right now who is saying, oh, what cage elevator shortcut?
So what's the plan, boss? What's the plan? What's the plan? I'll tell you what the plan is. That son of a bitch is gonna come through.
I still like this area, and I like that some thought went into how the cannonball trap would be reloaded. I also think that the run up the stairs is timed perfectly for a player in light armor.
You get this straight. Nobody is. What are you waiting for? Fucking kill him! Shit!
I wonder if there's a tiny little dog in the wheel hidden somewhere in the walls, providing power to all of those swinging blades.
Andre Coben. Were you saying something
The boss
about
itself
my
is
daughter?
fine. The only bad thing about him is that his hand grab can be inconsistent
was
about
just
when it
messing
hits
with
you,
you,
as you
man.
can see from footage playing
I
right
didn't
now.
mean it.
This instance was
I
particularly
swear
bad as
I
it looks like
didn't
even
mean
the
it.
game
Then make
doesn't
it up to
understand
me.
what just happened and thinks
Tell
I'm
me
still
why
alive at
you
the bottom of
killed
the
her.
wall.
I can't tell you. All you can do is kill me.
Getting back to the boss after that, it even put my bloodstain down there, and I couldn't reclaim any of
It
my
was
souls.
just a job. They just gave me a picture and told me to provide a body. That's all it was, a dump job.
They isn't good enough.
The corrupted angel
Who are
brain
you
gargoyle
working
things
for?
pick you up and
I
you
can't
ascend to
tell you.
Anor Londo.
I'm still working for them. They'll gut me if I tell you.
They're not the ones you should be worried about right now.
You don't get it, Fisher! They're bigger than you. They're bigger than me. Don't you see? They told me you were coming.
Užijte si každý den. Claritin přináší úlevu od příznaků alergie až na 24 hodin. Žijte svůj život naplno s Claritin. Každý den.
If you're talking to the Ice Queen, Fisher, I'd advise you to listen. She knows all sorts of things you'd be interested in.
Wastes of potential in the entire game.
What took you so fucking long?
Don't move! Hands in the air! Fisher. Nice and easy!
Man, this is Ghost Hawk 1. We've secured Panther and are ready to return to base.
All right, Grim.
You run down the
You
stairs
get
from where
this
the
one.
gargoyles dumped you, and
But
you're
if it's a
introduced to
setup.
a new enemy by itself.
Son
This is
of a...
good. In the very next room, there are two of the same enemy that must hate each other because they don't give a shit and are usually a way to kill. The rest of the
I'll be happy when we drop off Sleeping Beauty.
So will breathe. I saw his people up.
He's awake.
If you didn't get a chance to chop off a tail in the boss fight, you can do it now.
Fuel isn't
After
free,
that, you
man.
seemingly come to a dead end. Looking around the area, perhaps even going back up the elevator and finding the blocked entrance
Colonel
to the
Prentice,
archives,
Major
you
Robertson.
finally realize that
We
they
don't have time to
expect you
chat.
jump onto a jagged
Our timetable
arc
says your men need to
something that
move.
looks like you have
Everything's
no business
operational,
climbing.
Director Reed.
On
We
my
started
first
deployment at
playthrough, I
900
only
hours
figured
this
this
morning.
out because
Good,
my
keep things
messengers
going
were
on your
on
end. I'm heading back to Third
This
Echelon
isn't
to
the
prep
best level
things there.
design, but it's better
Oh,
than
our
what's
people
coming
will
up.
be just fine.
Never had any
Window,
doubts.
you find some enemies
Now,
on a
gentlemen,
ladder
if you'll
leading to a
excuse
path
us,
across some ceiling joists.
I need a minute with Miss
If you look
Grimstar
carefully
here.
here, you can see that these wooden beams
There's a
aren't
loose
even
end
wide
that
enough
needs
for your
tying
character
off.
to stand
Of course.
on. Both of his
Major?
feet are floating in the air around it. This is another part of the game that is trivial for
Right.
anyone playing with a ranged attack.
Fisher's
with
all
special
yours, Anna.
sorcerers.
You packaged him for us in Malta, you get to unwrap him here. Find out what he knows about the EMPs,
On the
how
other
he
side,
knows
you
it,
jump down
and
into
why
a
he's been
controlled
hunting
central
our friend
elevator
Mr.
that you
Kogan.
use to open the path
Might take a
into
while,
the
Tom.
vault and to
He's been
another
trained to
bonfire.
resist interrogation.
I'm authorizing you to use whatever persuaders you need, chemical or otherwise. Get the answers.
You carry
and
on
dispose
toward
of
what
them.
I believe is the central part of a castle and fight more
Just
of the
don't be as
giants.
messy this time.
You now also have to fight the brain
Well, I'll keep that in
gargoyles
mind.
can fly, but only
Anything else?
sometimes.
Just get to it.
Knocking
Call
them
me
off
when
the
you
ledge
have
here
something.
makes me
I'll
really
be at
wonder
HQ.
about the game's level of polish. They clearly have wings and were just shown to be flying when carrying you from Sen's fortress. I really don't understand this. If they couldn't get the enemy working properly, why is it even in the game? The next section is widely considered to be the biggest incident of bullshit in Dark Souls and ranks high in all of gaming.
Listen
I
to me.
can't really
I'm working
emphasize
for
that
President
enough,
Caldwell as a
and
mole
if you've
inside
played the
Third
game
Echelon.
before, you knew this
Reed's
was
the new
coming.
director,
I'd
and he's
like to
working
add that I
hand in
think
hand with
people
our
often
hosts here,
overlook the
a
smaller
PMC
piece of
called
bullshit
Black
right
Arrow.
before the archers,
They're
the two
running a
gargoyles
pipeline
on
for
the
stolen
platform.
Russian EMP
How are
tech
you meant
from
to kill
Malta,
these?
and
If
Reed's
you run in and
stonewalling
fight,
any
the
kind of
archers will pelt
investigation
you the
into
whole
it.
time. If
Reed's
you try to fight
stonewalling
them on
the
the edge of the
president.
roof, they'll likely knock
He's got
you off.
serious political coverage from somewhere, and the president isn't getting anywhere through channels. We know they're in the final stages of prep for something very ugly, but what we don't know is what it is or where it's going down.
Really? Then again, you seem more interested in field work these days.
You literally
Stop
can't
it.
lure them back
I
to
need
make
you
it
to
a
do
fair
this.
fight. Their
The second
models
I
are
make a
too
move, my
big to
cover
fit
is
through the
blown.
narrow gate.
But you're
What
on the
usually
outside
ends up
now.
happening
You are
is
free
that
to
they try to
act.
follow
I
you
don't
up
do
and end
this
up
sort of
killing
thing
themselves by
anymore.
running right off the
Tell
roof.
that to the
Again,
men you
these
killed
are
in
creatures
Malta.
that have
Now,
wings
if you
and
don't make
can
it look
fly.
like you escaped and attacked me, I'm dead. So make it look good, Sam. Hit me. Do what you have to do.
Grim, let me
Dashing up
remind
to
you,
face
I'm
the
out
archers
of the
looks
game.
pretty epic, but I can't think
You're
of
not
any other
out.
moment in the game that
All
is
it took
as
was
awkward
one
as when
hint
you
about
finally
her.
do get up there and start
Only
pumping
one
shields
hint
with
about
the
Sarah,
knight.
and you
The most
dove right
consistent way
back
to get
in.
past here is to get him to attack you until he knocks himself
What do
off
you
the
know
ledge.
about her?
This can sometimes happen in a few seconds or a few minutes. There's so much wrong here. The knockback inflicted by the arrows is excessive. Any slight movement made when you're toe-to-toe with a knight can send you falling. You can't have the camera pointing at both knights together when you reach the top, meaning
I know
that
she's
one of them
alive.
can often get
How's
three
that for
shots at your
starters?
back.
You're lying. She's dead. Lambert told me she was dead, and I take his word over yours.
She's alive, Sam, and I know where she is. I've
Sometimes
known
people
all
state that
along.
they can do this part first time, every time, and therefore
You're
it's not
lying.
bullshit.
Why should
so
I
here's
believe
a time
you?
lapse of me doing it
Because
7
my
times in a row
people
without
have
dying.
her. If you help me, you get to see it. If you don't, it's out of my hands.
Do not lie to me about this, or I'll kill you. You understand me?
I will kill you.
Sam, I've been wanting to do this for years. Okay.
I still think it's bullshit. The rest of the area
Okay,
is great. The
that'll
knights
do.
inside the castle are a solid, fair enemy.
Good work.
There are many mimics in this area, and if the first one didn't teach you a lesson,
Here.
from here on you'll attack
My
every
car's
chest
just
before
outside their
you open
security
it.
gate. It's a red
The wasted
T208.
potential I mentioned
I disabled
earlier
the
is in
GPS
layout of
locator
Anor
chip, so
Londo.
Third Echelon's
There's been
birds
less
can't find it.
interconnectivity between the levels
And
since
take this
Blighttown,
snake
and
cam.
I feel like this
It's
place
linked with
was
this
meant to
phone.
be returned
The
to that
signal's
layout.
encrypted.
In case you
There are
get
many
lonely.
unused doors and shortcuts
So
that
I can
aren't
set
really
up a call
useful.
with Sarah
I think
to
that there
prove
should
to you
have
that
only
she's
been one
alive and
bonfire in this
unharmed.
entire level,
Now we need
right
to
before
get
the
you out of
central
here without them
elevator where
coming
the
after
first
you.
gargoyle was.
C4
Without
should help with
changing
that.
much in
There's
the
some
level
right
itself,
outside.
you can
Get
still
it
go
and
through
call
the
me back.
joists and manipulate the elevator, only now the bonfire is
I don't
positioned
get the
in a way that
gun.
doesn't require you to call and move it every time you die. If keeping the archer segment is really
Just point it
necessary,
at the right people.
you could open this set of doors once you get into the
I
castle
will.
instead of lighting another bonfire. Finally, you could open the main entrance before Ornstein and Smough like you still can, only now it's close to the same bonfire and is roughly the same distance away from the one where you spent that boss.
Oh my god!
The end of Anor Londo is the second big spike in difficulty in Dark Souls, and the game never really gets more difficult after this point. Like the Bell Gargoyles, I don't think it's a coincidence that there is another smith in this area to provide a means to upgrade your gear while you're trying to fight this boss. I have a lot to say about Ornstein and Smough, and it incorporates a lot of the game's core mechanics. This boss is often heralded as the game's crowning achievement. Some of the things people say about this fight near cringe-inducing levels of adoration, to the point that I'm a little nervous about criticizing it. I think it's a good fight, but it is by no means a fair fight, and I don't just mean because it's 2-on-1. After all, it's not just Ornstein and Smough you're fighting, it's also the game's camera, and the entire development team at From. First off, let's get the repetition out of the way. The boss has two targets, and that immediately hampers the game's combat system. The only saving grace here is that Smough moves so slowly that you can often control how much you deal with both of them attacking you at the same time. Other parts of the fight aren't so justifiable. Ornstein can often get stuck or hide behind Smough, which makes it so you can't see what he's doing. This wouldn't be so bad except that he has the ability to throw lightning at you,
Sam,
which has the same
bad
issue
news.
as all other
Sarah's
projectiles
fine,
in the
but
game.
I have to
It
push
can
back the
smoothly
call I
and
promised
harmlessly
you.
pass through
Stop
enemy
playing
models and still
games
hit
and
you.
don't call me again
Making
unless you
enemy
got my
projectiles
daughter on
damage
the
other
line.
enemies would be easily exploitable, and I can understand why they chose not to have the game work that way. But surely the solution would be to just make it so enemies block the projectile but still take no damage. Or, in this specific case, the lightning could hit Smough and temporarily empower him with lightning so it prevents the random bolts coming at you, but also adds a mechanic to the fight. Ornstein also has a rapid dash attack that looks cool but is unfortunately buggy. Just look at this. Look at it. Is he stuck? Is the attack over? What the fuck is he doing? Then he snaps forward, sometimes right behind you, and gets instant anyway. This is the best time to talk about how different the game can be depending on how each player chooses to play. At the basic level, your class selection can determine a lot. So can loot drops or what weapons each player tries and decides that they like. These are all good things that can add variety to the game and increase replayability. Dark Souls also has a lot of tools in order to help players of varying skill levels. Farming, kindling, phantoms. I haven't spoken about the multiplayer until now because I thought this would be the best place for it. I also want to show another example of how magic works in the game. I didn't know you could summon other players or phantoms during my first playthrough. I like to think that I wouldn't have resorted to it if I had known, but I'm not so sure. Many people believe that Ornstein and Smough aren't meant to be killed solo. I don't agree with this statement, but I still think it's interesting. Specifically, it raises several questions about the intended methods for getting through different parts of the game. Are you meant to use magic? Are you meant to summon outside help? Some of you may be screaming right now that there is no meant, or there is no right way to play the game, and that the different methods are all there to offer different ways to play. And you're right. At least, you're sort of right. Ornstein and Smough show that some ways of playing Dark Souls are just flat out better, flat out easier. My first character was a knight with a longsword and a shield. My first kill of Ornstein and Smough took a long time, and I'm not talking about attempts. I'm talking about the actual duration of the fight when I killed them. It's all about keeping the two of them in front of you and constantly retreating when both are close. You keep your shield up and wait for Ornstein to race ahead and jab at you, then you counterattack and hope that he doesn't randomly skip away. When you do hit, you take off a little shaving of his health, and then you resume to backing away and do the whole thing all over again. Contrast this with summoning Solaire, who isn't even another player, and you have a tank who keeps Smoke busy and you can just circle around Ornstein and safely destroy him. Contrast this even more with Magic, and well, it's really easy to throw spells constantly when you can keep it range and never have to worry about getting too close to both of them. I hate to harp on about this, but playing Dark Souls as a caster turns the game into a third-person shooter in a world where you're the only one with a gun. Seriously, the clip that's been playing sped up all this time is what this fight looks like for a Sword and Shield character who is level 50. It's sped up because if it was played in real time it would last for 8 fucking minutes. Here's the fight then with another solo level 50 character, only this time with spells. Look at how disgusting this is.
لقد فهمت جهنم. أعتقد أن هذا الأمر كيف تجد ذلك أيها الوقت؟ أتود أن تلعب؟ إنه هناك. إنني أراه. Hey, what's your name, fucker? انتبه.
Don't thank me till we're out of here.
When's backup coming?
The question. Wofford Base. This is Husky. I got 2 for a ride out of here.
Husky, this is Wofford Base.
It's for this reason that it's hard to gauge other players when they talk about having an easy time with certain bosses. Ornstein and Spell weren't as bad as everyone said. I just summoned a friend and we split the bosses apart, and then I cast Soul Sphere, and I touched on this point earlier with the Undead Dragon in the Valley of Drakes, but I really have to wonder what the developers want the players to do in certain situations. There are so many instances in the game that a ranged attack is near mandatory, and yet it's never explained like the other fundamentals. For anyone thinking that From wants players to figure it out for themselves, the other essential mechanics are spelled out quite literally in messages burned into the floor. All classes could have been given a ranged weapon or a simple spell in the Asylum. There could have been some sort of test, like a key hanging from the ceiling somewhere, that needed to be hit with a range attack in order to retrieve so that players become used to using something other than melee weapons. Sorcerers and Pyromancers are both given a shield. All classes are actually, even the Deprived. It's clear that blocking is a core system in the game and that choosing not to use it is an optional challenge. Why not do the same here with range attacks?
Roger that, Basilic. Why don't you boys sit your asses down and we'll come get you?
As the game is now, I often feel like I'm cheating when I resort to confidence spells. Many groups of enemies don't even react to being shot. It looks broken because it is broken.
Hey Sam, I'm being tailed here. Black Arrow wants to crash our party.
It's not a secret that we know each other, Vic. They're watching you, hoping to catch me.
I've read Ornstein and Snow described as a dance between the bosses and the player. It can certainly feel that way sometimes with constant movement and ducking and dodging around the pillars. The key difference is that you're never an active participant in this dance. If you're fighting alone, you're forced to passively move away from them until the programming aligns in a way that provides you with an opening for an attack, and then you have to hope that Ornstein doesn't jump away before it lands. I never die to this boss anymore. I also never have a fun time either because it's so boring to wait sometimes more than a minute to attack without taking damage.
Just the base. Wait for him to lead us to Fisher, then let me know, and we'll attack him down here so fast it'll make your head spin.
I wasn't following you. I swear.
Talk to me about Victor Cost.
He's just this
If you include the DLC areas, receiving the Lord Vessel after Ornstein and Smough is roughly the halfway point in Dark Souls. There are 4 paths left to explore in the base game, and I firmly believe there is a dramatic drop in quality at this point. The DLC saves the game from becoming awful in its final act.
Tell me about your plans for me and Vic Cost.
Fuck Fisher. I was supposed to call it in when we saw you. Backup's waiting, ready to take you in.
Time for a change of plans, then.
Before moving on to those areas, I want to briefly speak about the Painted World. This is an optional secret area that you access by having the peculiar doll in your inventory. You get this by returning to your prison cell in the asylum. This is a secret area that leads to another secret area, and it's commendable that such a big chunk of content is left hidden away. The Painted World is an outstanding level and is the only other place in the game that recaptures the interconnected feeling of Undeadburg.
I mean, yeah, nothing makes sense, but you gotta draw the line somewhere.
Got a minute to talk.
Oh shit! You're Fisher, are you? Oh shit!
It loops around on itself and takes you through many paths in order to unlock doors so you have a direct run to the fog gate at the end.
Why are you following Victor Cost?
Cost was just bait, an lone associate. We were waiting for you. Told to call it in when we saw you.
The issues I have with this level are minor. The harpy ambush at the top of the tower should have only been one of the monsters at first.
I've taken
Introducing
care of
two
your
at the same time doesn't give the player a chance to learn their attack patterns.
If we're gonna do the face-to-face thing, we gotta do it.
The Bloated
now.
Hollows releasing
area
Toxic is
around the
also
monument?
exceedingly punishing for melee players, especially given the fact that you're stuck in this level until you find a way out, and there's no source of blooming moss to cure Toxic status. Crossbreed Priscilla is an optional boss that I didn't kill on my first playthrough because she wasn't hostile.
If thou seekest I,
thine desires shall be requited not. Those spotters had to have backup.
She's a little underwhelming, but it's an interesting idea to have to look for her footsteps in the snow and then attack before rolling away.
You'll find your favorite pistol.
I didn't get you anything.
Shut up, Sam. There's no time.
If this boss had been at the same caliber as, say, Quelaag, then Painted World would have been hands down my favorite level in the game.
Low intensity, short range. The bag's shielded so you can stash your gear in there, but hit the trigger, you'll fry everything around you to use as juice.
Nice. What else do you have for me?
There's a file in the bag, but here's the short version. There's an R&D house called DoD contractor that does work on EMP technology.
So,
6 months ago, they suddenly contract out all their security to those assholes over at Black Arrow.
Excluding your trek through the Dark Root Garden to kill Sif, the final sections of the game all employ a sort of gimmick in order to increase the difficulty, or at least that's the intention. I view it that they ramp up frustration.
Alright, time for you to go. You ping me when you reach safe distance, and we'll talk more about White Box before you go in.
Will do. Stay safe.
By order of the Department of Public Works, this fair and the museum are now closed. We have detected a gas leak on
Crystal
site.
Caverns has
Everybody
invisible
is to
floors,
leave the
two
fairgrounds in an orderly fashion.
Isolate has the lava,
Attention,
and
attention.
New Londo requires
There's a gas
item
leak on the
usage
site.
in order to damage
For your
enemies
safety,
and
we need
avoid
you to
damage
proceed to
to
your
walls.
car in
The
an orderly
requirement
fashion
of the
immediately.
purse and the
I repeat, this is for your safety.
that I think are closest to functional.
The fair's closing!
The curse is a pain, but easily solved. The ghosts themselves are incredibly annoying and are made even worse by the game's insistence on letting enemies attack through walls but not the player. The room at the end of this area can easily result in you being swarmed from all angles with multiple ghosts layering their attacks all over each other. The darkness, on the other hand, requires the sacrifice of your shield in order to see what you're doing, or you could just use magic if you're playing the game on easy mode.
All those years you were lying to me.
I like the idea of
It was
these
for the greater
gimmicks more
good,
than their
Sam.
implementation.
And I would do it again
At
in
this
a
stage in the
heartbeat,
game,
for
you
the
are
same
going on the
reasons.
offensive to find and kill some
Guess
of
I
the
never
most
did know
powerful
your
beings in the world. The deity-like figures that were showcased in the game's opening cinematic. It makes sense that the areas that these beings inhabit would be hostile to you and inflict some sort of limitation. The game doesn't really get much harder at this point, instead it sets out to make the player weaker. You can complete these areas in any order that you wish. In theory, player choice should always be a good thing, and having multiple paths means that if you get stuck in one area, you can then go and try a different one. In practice, however, it means that each of these 4 paths needs to be roughly equal in difficulty since you have to accommodate whichever one the player chooses to do first. Through leveling and upgrades, especially if you do New Londo first and find a very large ember, the areas you do last may end up being the easiest of the 4. The Tomb of Giants shows how sadistic From can be. Another game, having effectively blinded you, would put in enemies that you can fight more traditionally, like the Knights or Hollows, that you can switch to a shield when you find them and block their attacks. Instead, they put in one of the most aggressive, rampaging enemies that can pounce out of you from the darkness and bash through most shields. This area is quite small, and I suspect the reason for that is to limit the chance of players getting lost or becoming annoyed that they're blind for so long. It's generally a decent area and is my least hated of the final four. The one part that I have the biggest issue with is the meat grinder of a tomb that holds the large divine ember. This is another instance that I have absolutely no fucking clue what the developers intended melee builds to do, aside from a suicidal jump to grab the items and then never go back. This is a very poor encounter. Gravelord Nito is one of the best looking bosses in the entire game. I think that figuring out that you need to use a divine weapon to permanently kill his minions is a good twist on the fight. Overall, I think it's fair, except for his silence fight, which is horribly inconsistent. Even if the boss is off screen, you are given a warning that it's coming by a sharp scream. You're meant to be able to avoid it by sprinting straight away so that it thrusts where you were just standing, but as you can see, this is never reliable. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I think I'm done here, Grim. Maybe I'll go look for this guy that everyone's talking about.
Lucius Galliard?
You know him?
I don't have much else to say about this.
Let me get back to you on this.
Some players may have bought into Londo before acquiring
In the meantime,
the
we'll have an analyst working on
level
Robertson's
changes
data.
after opening the floodgates. You can go back to the Valley of Drakes and see that bodies have washed out to where the Drakes are standing. It's an impressive
How
detail.
did Sam get on site at the Lincoln Memorial? Easy.
The Dark Wraiths are one of the coolest looking enemies in the game. They're more aggressive versions of the Knights and create a fun gauntlet of encounters on your way to the boss.
The
Four
president's on
Kings
the line,
highlights a
Sam.
part of the game
We
that
need
is
to
never
eavesdrop on the
communicated well to the
conversation
player.
Reed's about to have with
Elemental
Galliard.
defense is important,
So
and
bug the
with the
memorial.
following examples, you can see
We
how
thought
big
of
of
that,
a
Mr.
difference is
Fisher.
made simply
Galliard's
by
people
choosing a
scrubbed
more
the site in
appropriate
preparation
shield
for my
for
vice
this fight.
president's
I
charming
think
little
this is
speech.
overall a
And
good
there was no
lesson for
time to
players
get
to
new
figure out
equipment in place.
themselves.
And what's
If damage
plan
is
B?
being done through a 100% physical resist
morning's
shield,
camera
it
equipment
isn't
is
much
still
of a
in
leap to
place.
look at the other
Get to the
resist
control
levels the
booth,
shield has
hack the
and then
camera
work out
controls
what's
to
happening.
record the
Or
conversation,
failing that,
and uplink
looking
the
up
feed
how it
to
all
us.
works with
Just
Google.
like that.
I
Alright,
want to
I'm
talk
on it.
about corpse running and the game's use of elevators for this boss. The run back to Four Kings is the only part of the game that made me look up online to see if I had missed a bonfire somewhere. I couldn't believe that the corpse run was intentionally that long, and I still have trouble believing it now.
Let's go
the
after
issue is
Reed.
exacerbated
smart
heavily
play
by
is
the
to talk
fact
to
that
Galliard.
elevators don't
We can
reset
find
on
Reed
death.
later.
It's a
I concur.
bewildering design
I want to
choice
know
to
more
make the
about
player have to
Megiddo
pull a
and
switch
Lucius
and then
Galliard
wait
is the only
every
source
single
we have.
time, or
Okay,
to assume that
go.
they're going to fail and
I'll freeze
remember to
Galliard
send
in
the
place.
elevator back up before they die. Some people might argue that having the elevator remain how you left it
My name
adds a
is
sense
Anna
of
Grimm's
permanence
daughter.
to your
I'm
actions
calling
and
on
makes
behalf
the
of
world
Tom
feel
Reed of Third
authentic.
Echelon.
That it's a real
You
place that
really
you can
shouldn't
interact
talk to
with.
Grim like
I
that.
understand this stance, but the game
Guards!
itself violates it in several places.
Where the hell are my
the traps in
guards?
Sense Fortress rightfully reset.
Just you and
Some
me,
walls that you
Lucius.
destroy are also
Let's
magically
talk.
repaired if you die.
What's your connection with Reed?
If you ask nicely, I tell you. He's just hired help.
Same goes for the floor in the asylum
God,
with
you're
the stray
thick.
demon.
This is bigger than Reed, bigger than Third Echelon. They're just convenient.
Then why does Reed want you out of town?
The rolling ball launcher also changes direction
Your
as you
enhanced
hinder your progress,
interrogation
even though there's no one
techniques
there to operate the lever.
need work.
There's also an elevator
He wants
in
to
Lost
run the
Islake
show where
that
the
moves ahead of
EMPs
time
are
to cater
triggered.
to the player.
There's three of
The
them
alternate path to
scattered
Fort
around
Kings
the
is a
city.
bonfire on the other side of the
In a
Valley of
few
Drakes,
hours, they
but
go
this is
off,
also at the
and
top
he
of
gets to
another
play
elevator.
commando.
As I mentioned
There are
earlier with the
people he
Basilisk
wants to
curse,
impress.
if the game thinks that
The
inconvenience
EMPs.
is a
Where do I
legitimate
find
source
them?
of difficulty, then
Say
they miss a lot of
please.
opportunities to explore that idea. This may seem like a nitpick, but if you're inexperienced or die a lot in New Londo, all of this waiting can add up
I
to
don't
half
know.
a minute a pop.
That's part of the plan. You see? You can't stop it, Fisher. It's too big. It's too late. And the people I work for, This is just part of what they've got going on.
This corpse run is so long that I always run through the area even though I find the enemies to be enjoyable. There's a sweet spot to the length between a bonfire and a boss. If it's too short, then the player will just sprint to it, but that can also happen when the run becomes too long. I also think that it's a mistake that your bloodstain ends up trapped in the boss area if you die on the other side of the fog door. I used to think this was a compelling mechanic as it can lead to some desperate scrambles to reclaim your souls during the boss fight. But now I think a better solution would be that the boss absorbs all the souls that you dropped and keeps them over multiple deaths, which you are then given in a lump sum when you finally kill the boss.
What's happening?
This provides a larger reward after killing them and as incentive for the player to fight their way back each time instead of bypassing all of the enemies for another boss attempt. After 10 tries at a boss, with your bloodstain now having an obscene amount of souls tied to it, dying without reclaiming them is a surefire way to make the player suicide run back to the boss room every time from then on. It would also be cool to see just how high some people can get this number if they end up stuck on a boss for hours. That said, learning how to run through an area is a skill all on its own and can be fun in its own right.
Went over the fence.
Attention all units, we have an officer in trouble at the Lincoln Memorial. All
Sam,
units in the vicinity.
use non-lethal
Four
force
Kings
when
requires
dealing with
high
the
damage
police.
to kill each
No
one before
killing.
the next one
President's
spawns.
orders.
The surreal, entirely black area is a cool change from the rest of the game. Part of the difficulty here is fighting them after the game is taking away your range slot, but the real difficulty is working out the Omega Shield with high magic resistance. Overall, it's a good fight.
He's waiting for you again, Sam.
Come here, Fisher. I'm waiting for you.
He jumped down. Keep going, dead ahead.
Aside from gimmicks, the main issue I have with the final areas of the game is that they have none of the creative level design that works so well in the early game. Having every area be like this could be tiresome, but the endgame in Dark Souls is mostly navigating straight paths full of enemies that have a few optional areas to explore, but never loop back into themselves. They're so far separated from the rest of the world that there's no sense of connecting them back either. You rely on the Lord Vessel warp instead.
He's outside and on the move again, Sam.
Officer in trouble!
Huh?
That's him! Watch yourself! Gonna hit!
Ceaseless Discharge is a boss that many players will kill earlier than this, and it's one of the most underwhelming in the game. This area is huge and offers 2 weeks back to the start, implying that you need to use it for something, but you never do. You kill him by cycling through baiting an attack and then doing enough damage to the single tendril, which somehow does enough internal damage to kill his entire body. In a game that you can hack off entire tails of bosses, this doesn't seem right.
He's headed for the parkway, Sam. He's headed...
Killing Ceaseless makes the lava in the area recede. There's a lot of copy and paste in this level, but I think it works out okay. Having bosses from early in the game come back as regular enemies is common in video games and works to empower the player.
Sam, a second wave of operatives is on its way.
The boss here is also a repeat of the Asylum Demon with a fiery twist. But since many players wouldn't have found a way back to the Asylum to kill the second iteration of this boss, I think it's okay to be used again here. Farther in, 4 worms ambush you at once, and although it's possible to rush ahead and get out of danger, I think most people will react by turning around to run away and end up getting themselves killed by the 2 worms that spawn behind you, which are perfectly positioned to box you in. Also, I was wrong earlier about the game forgetting about the plunge attack. There's a worm here that is in a clear position for you to jump on and stab him in the head. Or maybe not.
Looks clear to me. We need to lock down all the external garage.
The fire stage is a short walk from the bonfire. After killing him, you can run up some stairs and fight more of what looks like to be little fire stage babies. There's an elevator here that has already lowered and is waiting for you, which takes you up to Quaylag's domain and to the bonfire there. Going back down, you return to the way forward and immediately come to yet another bonfire in close proximity.
Near the server room. Get to him before security does, or he won't be able to help you.
The Centipede Demon is close by, and after killing him, there's yet another bonfire right away. This brings the total to 4 in really close proximity, and yet they couldn't have put another bonfire at the bottom of one of the elevators for 4 kings.
What was... something...
I've never had trouble killing the centipede because by the time I get here, I've leveled to the point that my attacks do heavy damage to him. The lava here makes fighting him awkward, and I wonder if you're meant to chop off one of his arms in order to get the ring and then die and come back with it on in order to do it. Usually I lure him to one of the wider platforms in the corner of the room and attack him quickly. After this boss, we reach Lost Izalith proper, and what I consider to be a tie with Duke's Archives for the worst area in the game, although for vastly different reasons. Losing a ring slot to wade through the lava is fine. The constant ticking damage is also fine. The fact that the sound it makes while dealing damage, however, is not fine. I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect that this was done because the developers were afraid that
Third Echelon
realized they were
always
taking
been about
constant
was the
damage.
truth.
Anyone who has made it this far into the game is going to be watching their HP intently when they first test the ring, and will see that the damage is constant. It's a weird instance of hand-holding in a game that often prides itself on being obscure. Seriously, listen to how obnoxious this is.
I'm sorry. Please try again tomorrow. Thank you. Closed for the evening.
I'm here to see Tom
The enemies
Reed.
in this area are
Mr.
best
Reed
avoided.
is
They're
currently
huge and
unavailable,
randomly
but
jump
if
and
you'd like to
flail
make an
into you.
appointment,
They're
Mr.
also one of the rare enemies
Fisher.
in the game that can
I
damage
used to
each
work
other.
here.
The best way to kill them is to find a spot to lure groups close together by shooting arrows.
Security alert. Main power is offline. Emergency power will be online in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
There are enemies in
Security
the
doors are closing.
Crown of the Sunken King that I think were put in the game to offer an explanation for what these mummified versions are. They're not as big, but their attack patterns are pretty similar. There are 2
Sam
raised
Fryman
buildings in
just
the
sent
lava
me his
here.
location.
My original
He's
intention
waiting
when
for you in
making
the
this
office
video was
off
to
the
criticize
server
the
room.
placement of a
Got it.
crucial bonfire behind an illusory wall. However, when I got back to this area, I realized that the game teaches you with the first building that a gap should be present in the second one. Even in the unlikely event that you haven't encountered an illusory wall yet, it's not unthinkable that this would be the first time that a player would think to look for one.
Any idea what set off Q1?
That said, even with this bonfire, the run to Bed of Chaos is one of the most grueling in the entire game. There's nothing really interesting going on in this area either, which makes me think that it's not completely finished. The collapsing floor is a fair trap because it doesn't kill you. The stomach for brains enemies are unnerving to look at, but ultimately easily dispatched.
Gobin.
Look, Reed, this was part of the deal. Protection. Well, protect.
The Pyromancer Witch has one of the most bullshit attacks in the game from Fire Pillar, which is also echoed by Bed of Chaos right behind her.
No. No, that's not enough. No. No, not good enough. What are you, nuts? That's crazy. You're too... What? Just gonna sit tight with my dick in my hand.
And every time you die, you need to re-equip the ring in order to cross the small section of lava and then take it off and put your other ring back on again. I'm not sure if this boss is the lowest moment in the game or if that anti-award still belongs to the archers in Anor Londo. From's solution to something that's broken and unbalanced is to make it so the player can affect it in a way that remains after death, like the toxic spitters and the nearby undead legs in the lava not respawning. There are examples all over the game. Bed of Chaos is an exercise in patience and trial and error. It's best done with a shield up while running to the next weak point and hoping for the best. Even if you do learn to follow a safe path or use the roots as an indicator of where the floor is stable, the boss's huge sweeping branching arms can easily knock you down. Are hit, you need to run through the middle and fall onto a branch under the floor, which is not easy to do even if you know what you're looking for. It takes a substantial amount of guesswork to even figure this
So now
out.
Sam knew everything.
Firestorm ability, which has a high chance of spawning under your feet and killing you. It can even get you after making the jump. where the area is so narrow that it kills you even though there's no visual fire spawning below you. What are you meant to do when this happens?
Damn it!
Die, apparently. What a boss.
Brilliant, right?
To the party, style of fashion.
Duke's Archives looks distinctly different from the rest of the game, and the two armored boars are a fun introduction to the area. Things go bad quickly right after this because, once again, there's an elevator right at the bonfire that you need to call down after every time you die. This time there isn't even a pressure plate to easily send it down after you go up. This area up here can be a grinder for new players. The hollows can surround you and do a lot of damage. It's still fine, however, because you've seen these attack animations before and it's similar to the scenarios found in Undeadburg. Continuing forward, you climb the stairs and discover that the area is quite small. There's another elevator that leads to a narrow corridor and, much sooner than expected, a fog door. After entering, you're already face to face with Seed. There are few sins greater that a game, movie, or book can commit than breaking the rules that it itself has established. It's lazy and undermines the entire experience. Everything from that point onward becomes unstable. If it was done once, then why not do it again? Why invest yourself in anything when it can change at any moment? Dark Souls breaks more than one of its own rules in this first Seed encounter. In fact, it breaks so many that I don't even know where to start. So let's try chronologically.
Mark the GPS coordinates for me. I'll see what I can do when I get there.
Roger that.
Dying here is unavoidable. When you come back to life, you have magically been moved to a different bonfire. The whole point of the Dark Sign Curse is that you return to the last bonfire you rested at upon death. It's a literal teleport that happens within the game's world and is not the typical meta respawn that other games utilize. When a boss kills you in Dark Souls multiple times, it remembers. If Seath has killed you 5 times, Seath knows that he's killed you 5 times. In this encounter, you have somehow been trapped instead of being sent back to the last bonfire. You're locked in a prison cell. You have all of your items and equipment. You've been captured but not stripped of your stuff. You've also been plopped next to a new bonfire, all of which are strange if being captured is really what's happened here. If you try to use a homeward bone, you're teleported back to this room. You then have to light the bonfire. The homeward bone specifically says it'll teleport you to the last bonfire you rested at, yet the game thinks you've just rested at this one before you've even had a chance to light it. Let's keep going. There's a snake man on the other side of the prison bars. He only has 1 HP. That's another rule broken. The real kicker, and the only thing that makes me legitimately angry with the game, is that you kill him by attacking through the bars.
I thought you were dead. They told me you were dead.
Sam! I'm sorry, but if I hear that Black Arrow radio chatter right,
after deliberately preventing you from attacking through solid objects the whole game, this time the game explicitly allows and even wants you to strike through a solid barrier. And for what? What enjoyable gameplay is gained by doing all of this? If you truly are imprisoned here, you get out within seconds. It's the laziest attempt at holding someone ever. You keep all of your items. What you don't keep, however, are your souls and humanity. The final broken rule here is the most insidious. When I got to this part on my first playthrough, I didn't know that Seath was unbeatable. I thought that I had simply died to a new boss and that this prison section was a creative penalty. After fighting my way out, I immediately tried to find a way back to Seath's same room, and then this happens. He kills you again, and you're sent back to the bonfire. Only this time you can be cursed. He's still in that room. He still looks and acts like a boss. He still has a health bar. like there's some trick you didn't realize that's necessary to damaging him. The bosses in the game are built around the whole idea of pitting you against some seemingly impossible, initially insurmountable monstrosity that you eventually overcome. The Asylum Demon itself is the best example of this. It's introduced to the player so early that I think most people think that they're not supposed to kill it. You run away, and it's like, okay, well, this is what I was meant to do. Like, there's no way the game expects me to kill this. And then the Asylum loops back into it, and no, you do have to kill it. That's one of the first lessons that the game teaches you. But here, with Seed, it's a trick. You can never kill him here. You're supposed to find another way. Yet the game still puts your bloodstain in that room. It's a core mechanic and one that is reinforced over the entire game. Get back to your bloodstain and try again. Keep at it. Whatever humanity and souls you were carrying when you get there are forfeit, I guess. In order to retrieve them, you need to either get back to the boss room and be quick enough to grab them and then homeward bone, or you need to clear the entire prison tower without dying, then explore the archives without dying, get down the crystal cave without dying, and then kill Seed on your first try, and then get back to his room to your bloodstain without dying. This is next to impossible for new players and a slap in the face for those who have amassed a high amount of humanity through careful play up to this point. The archives themselves are frustrating for melee builds. The casters and hollow archers will pound you as you explore, and I think it's important to remember how confusing this area can be on your first time through. Adding insult to injury, when you finally do safely get into melee range with one of the sorcerers, they teleport away as a final fuck you. Again, if the design necessitates range attacks in this way, it should have been better incorporated into the Asylum section of the game. There's even a crystal archer hanging out in this room that you simply cannot kill without a ranged attack. I don't even know how he got there. Crystal caves, like the other ones that focus on a gimmick, is a waste of an area. You need to be a ranged character in order to kill the butterflies. There are effectively 0 other enemies here because of the decision to make part of the walkways invisible. My guess is that the lack of visible floors made putting enemies here impossible. Either they would show the player where the safe path is to walk, or they would make combat too frustrating. The end result are invisible paths that are just straight lines that have nothing to do. This makes for an incredibly long and boring run back to the boss if you die. If the developers had forgone the idea of this gimmick, they could have built a more traditional area here instead, with challenges and shortcuts and the like, but instead we get this wasted piece of shit. A minor point, what's going on with this crystal? Look how you slip down it when you run along. This is the only way to proceed through this area. Why does this happen? The game does this sometimes and has strange ideas on what can be walkable or not. In the video playing now, I died here and I still don't know what happened. I have viewed it a dozen times. I have no idea how I died. Seed is almost okay. He moves very slowly and is so large that, once again, you're at a disadvantage if you're a pure melee build. I'm getting tired of repeating myself about this now. He's so tall that you can't actually see what moves he's queuing up when you're attacking him. You need to back away and play conservatively, or just risk it and attack wildly with a high damage weapon to hope for the best.
Then meet me in the press room. We'll figure out how to tap you there.
Can't engage in contact. No visual. Holy shit! Kill him! Still searching! He's hostile! Hey!
You didn't run. Smart.
You don't get it, do you? You can't touch me. I got protection. I'm Teflon. So whatever you think you're gonna do to me, Mr. Has-Been, Mr. Rogue Agent, Mr. Washed-Up Spy, well, you can forget about it right now, because I'm bulletproof. Goddamn bulletproof, you hear?
Oh, really?
The final area of the base game is simplicity at its best. A victory march that's both straightforward and visually interesting. The enemies
You need to work on that whole bulletproof.
It's a gradual gauntlet of Black Knights that, at this stage of the game, should give the player little trouble. They drop powerful weapons and existing equipment. They also drop a fair amount of souls. It's a reasonable spawn to farm. Win is a great way to end the game. There's no gimmick to this fight. It's a straight duel between the two of you, and he is aggressive enough to make it challenging. Unfortunately, the final act of Dark Souls is so marred by the previous areas that Gwyn isn't enough to elevate for the rights of the first.
No way! Motherfucker!
Then that the DLC is some of the best ever added to the game.
Help!
video is meant to focus on the game's shortcomings, so it's a compliment to the developers that I don't have much to say about Lucille at all. The bosses are fantastic and follow the same theme as Gwyn, a straight duel with no gimmicks. All 4 of them are challenging without resorting to tricks or multiple enemies, and, as far as I've read online, they are considered to be among the best bosses in the entire series. Calamite is my personal favorite, even though I do have to admit it's not great design to have to die to him a few times to get through the developer message before you're given enough hints that you need the Giant's help in order to properly engage the boss.
Black Dragon posing the duress?
The only place the DLC fails is in the Silver Pendant, both in acquiring it and its use in the Manus fight. A message on the floor gives you a clue on how to open the illusory wall, and this is so simple that it might as well have opened the thing for you. Switching the item from your Estus Flask during the Manus fight can be unwieldy, and if the boss starts spamming the magical abilities, then it can start to feel tedious.
Yes! I did! Yes!
I was wondering.
Oh, man!
Nice work, Anna. I see you got some.
It's done!
For the stun he pulled at the
That's world record.
Well, he put up a little bit of a fight.
Of course he did. And now he's here.
Oh, I'm shaking so much.
Sam Fisher. Just
oh, man.
Useful. So how does it feel, Sam? Knowing you're gonna go down in history as the man who assassinated President Caldwell.
Fuck you, Reed.
Of course, we'll be just a little too late to rescue her. And you'll be shot multiple times trying to escape.
Oh my god.
Classic, but it's clean.
My heart is pounding. This time is so good.
The surveillance cameras footage is gonna show.
Your cameras, we own them. Your security measures, we made sure the Pulse fried them. We're Third Echelon, Madam President. We own every bit of information that goes through this town. And if I want to, I can make it look like you were assassinated by 2 circus clowns and a golden retriever. So shut up, and you might live a few seconds longer.
That's not Third Echelon.
It's not Lambert's Third Echelon. Last time I checked, he was dead. And guess what? Third Echelon nearly died with him.
Tom.
You see, the president decided the agency wasn't justifying its funding anymore. She was gonna shut us down, leave America vulnerable to the sort of...
Oh my fucking god, I'm so glad this worked. This run is so good.
Madam President, are you alright? Yes, I'm fine.
Oh man, I'm shaking so hard. Like, I did...
Maybe 2 minutes before
There are 10 seconds I lost in Washington because I didn't realize W wasn't working for some reason when I respawned. I got Golden Lincoln. Third Echelon was nearly perfect. I fell off the rail because I rolled off at the wrong angle. That was maybe 20-30 seconds. Reservoir was almost perfect. Downtown was almost perfect. White House was almost perfect. The final glitch was okay.
You son of a bitch!
Oh man, like, genuinely everything went perfectly. Like, finally I got a run where everything went perfectly. After 100 runs, there was a run where Airport glitch first try, Iraq first try, Reservoir first try, Third Echelon first try. Almost. White House first try, no fails in Downtown, no fails in White Box. White Box was perfect also.
POTUS is safe and secure.
My fucking god. Come on. 58-33. Oh my fucking god.
I've talked to Sam once since he left. He told me that he and Sarah were going to take some time to catch up. He talked about learning who was really important to you, why you always had to come back for him. He talked about family.
Oh my fucking god, I fucking did it! Yes! I did it!
Before he hung up.
Yes!
Vicky said, thanks for everything.
Oh my god, man.
Brother. Brother. That's family, right? I thought so.
Right, if you watched the YouTube video, thank you very much. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you... if you find yourself running this game, I hope you have as much fun as I have in these past 2 months. Because the game is fairly easy to pick up, especially thanks to Face Panda Killer's guide, which you can find either on the Speedrun forums, or I'll probably also put a link in the description, or also on the Discord. The people on the Discord are incredibly helpful, so I also want to extend a massive thank you to them. But yeah, this record is partially still Panda's, because I used the guide to learn the run, and I wouldn't be here without it, so yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who answered my questions on the Discord, and yeah, thank you for watching the video. So yeah, I'll probably check out some other categories. I also have some plans for categories which don't exist yet. So I'll definitely contact the Discord about that. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much, and yeah, have a great day. Have a great day, everyone.